Thank you, Aletha, for that wonderful presentation. One of the things that we wanted to reveal during the symposium this year is the reality of tribal governance. This is sort of a civics lesson that hasn't been taught very well in the educational systems either in the United States or Canada. But in fact, there is a fourth realm of governance within North America. In addition to municipal or state or provincial or federal governance, there is tribal or First Nations governance as well. And what you're seeing here is an example today of one example from the United States, within the United States, and one example from within Canada, where tribal governments are taking action to address a variety of needs for their communities through these kinds of projects. At the same time, they're making a significant contribution to sustainability and renewable energy objectives in those regions. So I thought that was a wonderful presentation, and thank you so much for that, Aletha. Our next speaker is Ava Hill. Ava is Chief of the 56th Elected Council of Six Nations of the Grand River, which has the largest population of all First Nations within Canada. She previously served 3 terms as a councillor, during which she met with Samsung officials in South Korea for the historic partnership agreement between Six Nations and Samsung on the wind and solar power project named the Grand Renewable Energy Park. Hill has extensive experience working with First Nations and Aboriginal organizations, locally, regionally, and nationally. She served as the Executive Director of the Chiefs of Ontario, as the Executive Assistant to former National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, and as the Co-Chair of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples. She has been active in the international arena, participating in the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous issues. Please join me in providing a warm welcome to Ava Hill.
Sego. Thank you, Tim. I'm glad to be here and glad to know that we have a young man of, I'll call him young, Tim Johnson, who is from our community and has been working here at the museum for 10 years. So I just want to thank him for the invitation and thank everyone for inviting us to be here today. We're very glad to be here and tell you a bit about our Samsung project. As Tim had mentioned, Six Nations of the Grand River is the most populated First Nation in Canada. Right now we have 25,000 members, almost 26,000, and continuing to grow. 50% reside on the reserve, and 46.8% are under the age of 30. In our community, we have 2,850 households, and we are working on a population growth of almost 3%. At the bottom of the slide, you will see the six tribes or the Six Nations that belong to our community. There's the Mohawk, the Oneida, the Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and Tuscarora. Our traditional homeland was in New York State, Upper New York State, and we are now settled in this area, and we work with communities or elected councils in Quebec, Ganazadagi, Ganawagi, Akwesasne, Tyendinaga, and others. So our brothers or sisters are spread throughout. This is our traditional territory, just to give you an example of where we are. It's covered under the 1701 NANFAN Treaty. The red lines will show you which our traditional territory was. The little piece in the middle is what we are calling the HALDIMAND Deedlands, and this is a bigger picture of that shows you where we are as compared to location. Brantford is one of the cities that is closest to us. We are, as you can see, not too far from Toronto and not too far from Buffalo and Niagara Falls. This the white part shows our traditional territory, as I said, in the Haldimand Tract, where we settled, and we had 950,000 acres. The pink part down on the bottom shows where we are now. Because we were allies with the British, we were allotted 6 miles on each side of the Grand River from its mouth to its source, beginning at Lake Erie and extending in proportion to the head of the river. and we were to enjoy those lands and their posterity forever. And we are trying to get into negotiations with the federal government to get them back to the table so that we can continue negotiations and get that land issue settled. This again just gives you a little picture of where we are located as compared to Buffalo, New York, Upper New York State, and Toronto. We have access, very close, as I said, to the border, not that far from Detroit, and also access to Toronto. As Tim said, I'm the elected chief. I have a 3-year term. I was just elected in November. I have 2.5 years left. I have 12 councillors. Our community is divided into 6 districts. I was a councillor in just one of the districts for 9 years prior to being elected as chief in November. We are a Haudenosaunee culture, and our culture is based on respect for the environment and each other. I also wanted to mention that we also have our traditional government in place, and we are trying to work together with them and bring our people together for the benefit of all of our community members. We have a strong tie to the land and our responsibility to maintain and protect the integrity of our environment. Many ceremonies and dances pay homage to all aspects of the environment, including the animals, the plants, the moons, the winds, thunders, water, air, etc. And our traditional people carry on these ceremonies throughout the year. Haudenosaunee are also organized by clans, and we once lived in longhouses according to which clan we belonged. This explains why family and the sense of community continue to be key underpinnings of our life at Six Nations. I always like to take the opportunity when I'm speaking to talk about our community, because we're a very vibrant community, and I'm very proud of what we have to offer. This is a picture of the Grand River. We also have an annual Grand River Champion of Champions powwow, which we like to invite everyone to visit. We are also the home to Pauline Johnson, who was the renowned poet who wrote From Flint to Feather. There's again a poster of our powwow, which is coming up. Should anybody want to travel up to Six Nations next weekend, or in a couple of weeks, we're going to be having our powwow. Tom Longboat, who's also, we're very proud of, he was an Olympic runner. He's from Six Nations. We also have many religious facilities in our community, along with our longhouses, and this is Mohawk Chapel, which is one of Her Majesty's Royal Chapels that is located in our community. We are also very proud of all of our individuals who have achieved in the area of arts, culture, and sport. At the top, we have a Junior B lacrosse team who are been three-peat national champions in Canada. And just now I have to mention that we have the Iroquois Nationals who are participating in the World Lacrosse Championships in Denver right now. And I understand that they're playing for bronze coming tomorrow. Unfortunately, they got beat by Canada. But we're very proud of the fact that, you know, the Iroquois Nationals and 13 members of those team are from our community, are able to perform at such a high level on the world stage and at the international stage. Some of you may recall a few years ago when they wanted to go to the World Championships in London, England, they were refused entry because they were traveling on Haudenosaunee passports and they were stuck in New York City for a while. This year they did go because it was in Denver and they were able to get across. We also have a professional golfer, Jesse Smith. We have 2 Juno Award winners who are, which is similar to Grammy Awards here in the United States. Those of you that may remember the Lone Ranger show, Tonto, or Jay Silverheels, is from Six Nations. His original name is Harry Smith. We have an NHL hockey player in the person of Stan Longboat, and Robbie Robertson, who played with the band, is actually also from Six Nations. We also have many artists, sculptors, potterers, Steve Smith, who is a world-renowned potter. So we are a very, as I said, a very vibrant community. Despite all that, we do have many challenges. Being one of the largest communities in Canada, we have many challenges because we have so many people that we had to provide services to. So we are looking to economic development to try and provide those services, because the Government of Canada, although they do have the fiduciary responsibility to provide resources to our community, they continue to cut back. So we are looking at other ways to generate revenue for our people, and we simply cannot afford to fail. The lack of capacity places our First Nations at a disadvantage in early negotiations because we don't know the details of every development that is coming our way. The 230 years of ongoing development has triggered community distrust towards developers, and we're just now getting into the area where we're starting to become more expertise in this and pulling in other experts that we need. And the big companies like Bay Street and Wall Street remain uncertain as to how to meaningfully engage with First Nations. And the Government of Canada, as I mentioned, is continuing to reduce their support to us, and particularly for their support for economic development. They have very little resources for economic development, yet they're quite willing to provide resources to keep our people on social assistance. And we don't want that. We want to start working on creating more jobs. Just on the whole development, I wanted to point out that the Article 19 of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And it says that states shall consult and cooperate in good faith with the Indigenous people concerned through their own representative institutions in order to obtain their free, prior, and informed consent before adopting and implementing legislative or administrative measures that may affect them. This means that before they impose any legislation on us, they are supposed to consult and accommodate us. They are supposed to get our free, prior, and informed consent, or before they do any development in our traditional territory. This doesn't always happen. Indigenous peoples have the right, this is other articles within the UNDRIP, that we have the right to the lands, territories, and resources which we have traditionally owned, occupied, or otherwise used or acquired. We have the right to own, use, develop, and control the lands, territories, and resources that we possess by reason of traditional ownership or other traditional occupation, as well as those which we have otherwise acquired. States shall give legal recognition, protection to these lands, territories, and resources, and such recognition shall be conducted with due respect to the customs, traditions, and land tenure systems of the Indigenous peoples. All of these articles are included in that international document, which is the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Canada was one of the last countries to endorse that resolution, but they still consider it to be a non-legally binding aspirational document. The Supreme Court of Canada has also come out with, which is the highest court in the land, has also come out with 3 rulings establishing the obligation on the Crown to consult with us and to accommodate us before any development takes place. Haida and Takua and Mikisew Cree are the names of those. And just last month there was another Supreme Court ruling that came down. It was called the Silcotin or the Roger Williams case, which states that it gives Aboriginal title, gives the title-holding First Nation the exclusive right to decide how that land is to be used and the right to benefit from those uses. The final use must be consistent with the common ownership of the interest and enjoyment of those lands for future generations. This 2014 decision confirms Aboriginal title over specific areas of land, and this means that the governments and others seeking to use these lands must obtain the consent of the Aboriginal title holders. We have a lands and consultation policy in line with those recent court decisions and the development, because we do have developers knocking on our door wanting to do business with us. We have developed our own consultation and accommodation policy. We have a team in place which is appointed from our staff of economic development and lands and resources. I should say that as the largest First Nation, we do have a large staff. We have 700 employees. And as I said, it's still not enough. We still don't have enough money to provide services for our people. But as a result of trying to generate our own revenue, we have put this team in place. They meet with proponents who are wanting to do business with us. They assess the projects that may have a potential impact on the land rights and our interests. They review the projects from a 360-degree view. They look at the land rights, they look at the environmental impacts, and they look at that the economic benefit will be back to our community. This team then negotiates and makes recommendations to our council, and after that we make presentations to our community. The developmental fundamentals are that our primary objective is the perpetual care and maintenance of our people, which will include everything from education to health to housing to infrastructure. We're looking for sustainable solutions that will meet the needs of today without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And we encourage the intensification of developed land and maximizing the utility of our existing infrastructure. We have a comprehensive community plan which was done in 2008 by our community planner. This outreach identified green energy as an industry that clearly aligns with our cultural values. And in 2009, we went to our community and did a project to find out what the community wanted. We held a series of think tank sessions which identified clean energy initiatives as key investment opportunities. This was called We Gather Our Voices project, and it forms the basis for the development of 6 Nations of the Grand River Development Corporation, which we are in the area of developing. This is our community decision-making model. The project proponent comes, they meet with the CAP team, they then develop a term sheet, comes to our council for approval. We go to our community, we hold a number of community engagement sessions to find out if it's acceptable to the community, then comes back to council for council approval, if the community agrees. They don't always agree, because we recently had a proposal where they didn't agree, so council turned it down. So we didn't enter into that. Once it goes back to council approval, we then develop the definitive agreement and then final approval. All our potential, as I said, all our potential agreements are put through a community engagement process, and anybody that wants to know any information on on these engagement processes or our projects can just check out this website, which is www.sixnationsfuture.com. There is a process there to receive comment and provide guidance for existing and future projects. As we have so many of our community members who live off the territory, and I know some are even living in here, all across the country in the United States, they can still have access to what's going on through this website and by providing their comments. Our unique hurdle rate, like many First Nations communities, Six Nations is severely underfunded, and we have many needs. Particularly since we are large. We do get budgets, but they're not enough. We have a request for capital investments which are weighed against our community priorities. We have need for housing. We have need for safe water, drinking water. We have a new water treatment plant, but now we need to find the resources to ensure that we can get piping to get that clean water to every house in the community. We have needs for new roads and bridges and other infrastructure, schools. And education is an important subject for us. I just came from an assembly of all the First Nations chiefs in Canada that was held in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where we are trying to sit with the government of Canada to get them to live up to their responsibility to provide enough funding and to give us jurisdiction and control over our own education. Healthcare is another important. These are all important things to all of our communities, and more so for us because we are such a large community. The internal rate of return is important, but it is not our ultimate acid test. So this is our view of perpetual care and maintenance, and this is something we use in the government to say this is why you need to come back and settle our land rights. Part of one of the first projects we entered into to start generating revenue, because there are others, but this is one of the first one and one of the main ones for us, is our relationship with Samsung. I just wanted to provide some of the timeline as to how we became involved with them. In June 2009, Samsung came to Canada and approached the provincial government in the province of Ontario, wanting to do business in the province. And we were introduced to them by provincial officials in June of 2009. In January of 2010, we executed a memorandum of understanding to begin negotiations. For a number of reasons, because we didn't really know each other, we were still just getting into things. The partnership broke down in January 2011. And nothing happened until October for 10 months, but then we resumed the talks. We took time to find out and learn more about each other. And in February of 2012, we developed a new term sheet, and it was struck and it was approved for community engagement. We then went to the community through our community engagement process. We got their support for it. We explained what the benefits, the economic benefits would be with respect to funding that would be generated and employment that would be created. And the community accepted it, and the definitive agreement process began. And in September 2013, we selected a Six Nation equity option, which is that we are 10% owners, equity owners in both the wind and the solar projects, and the financial close occurred. I should say as well that the land where the project is on, or the project is being constructed, is land that the province considers that they own. But part of the agreement is that because we're saying it is in our traditional territory, that they have entered into a lease with Samsung for those lands, but as the landholders, all that lease money is being returned to us. So we're looking at that as a good precedent with respect to our land rights. The project, as I said, was final close occurred in September 2013, and in February 2014, construction began, and we're looking for target commercial operation this fall in September, and hopefully the funding will start flowing back to our community. It has also created jobs for our communities. We have many people working there. The Grand Renewable Energy Park, here are the partners, Six Nations Council and Samsung C&T and Pattern are the partners on the wind project, and Connor, Clark and Lund and Samsung and Six Nations are the partners on the solar. It produces 249 megawatts. There are 67 Siemens turbines, 447,000 solar panels, and $1 billion total investment cost. As I said, our share is 10% equity, and the Ontario lease assignment with respect to lands. The completion date is looked at as September of 2014, this year, so we're looking forward to that. This is where the development is located in comparison to where our community is located. So it's not right on our reserve proper right now. It is in our traditional territory, close towards the Lake Ontario. The partnership mindset, and this is a quote that K-Jung Kim, everybody calls him KJ, he was the executive vice president and one of the main negotiators in the agreement. Samsung believes that renewable energy is a very important part of eliminating our dependence on dirty coal production and protecting the air that we breathe. We are very pleased that our investments are helping to create over 9,000 total jobs in communities across Ontario that have been hit hard by the global recession. And that was a quote from Samsung, which we're very proud to be a partner with them. The Grand Renewable Energy Project will offset 585,000 tons of CO2 each year, the equivalent of removing 110,000 plus cars from the roads. And it will conserve enough water each year to service the needs of 12,000 people and produce power to service 1.2 million homes over the next 20 years. This is, as we travel to, and I do have with me today Matt Jamieson, who's our Economic Development Director, and he was the main negotiator in this Samsung deal. So any of you that want to have questions later after the session, we're going to be here that we can both talk to you. And Matt and I and one of our other councillors traveled to Seoul, South Korea last June at the invitation of Samsung, and it was to celebrate the completion of our solar project. And this is myself with Shin Kim, who is the CEO of Samsung C&T. And as a symbol of our partnership in the whole project, we presented him with some corn husk dolls, which are indigenous to our community, just to celebrate that we were also becoming partners. These are just some of the partners as well, Connor, Clark, and Lon on the solar project, and this is in Seoul when we went out to celebrate. There's some more pictures there with the Koreans and the representatives from 6 nations. And this is a beautiful picture of Korea. South Korea, and what we did is we took the time to not only sit and negotiate, but we took the time to learn about each other's culture, and that's why the negotiations went on so year. And they found, the Koreans found that our culture, at 6 Nations, our indigenous culture is very similar to the culture that they have in Korea, and that was something that we found very much in common. This is just an energy portfolio, our equity direct ownership. This is what we are involved in. As I said, Samsung is one of the projects, the main one. We're getting involved in other projects as well. But we have equity direct ownership in projects that are covering 170 megawatts of wind, 100 megawatts of solar, 1.25 megawatts of rooftop solar, and 500 kWs of ground mount. And indirect project support, we are also involved in 260 megawatt wind and 30 megawatt large solar. So we are currently involved in projects that are totaling 560 plus megawatts, and we are reviewing projects that are under 200 megawatts. So we're really expanding in this whole energy area, and we're hoping that we can generate a lot of revenue for our community. We're also, in order to look after providing services to our community, we're going to develop a development corporation. This just gives you a quick snapshot of the organization chart of how that development corporation will be run. It is going to be completely arm's length from our elected council. The Development Corporation board structure will be composed of highly skilled community members who will prioritize business and development opportunities. We will have an advisory committee made up of youth, elders, and community members who will provide advice to the board of directors on how they feel that those funds should be expended. We will have a board of directors of skilled experts, business people from our community who will provide advice to the trust on how the distribution of our profits should be made. And then we will have a trust board who will make the distribution of funding back to the community for different areas. The trust will allocate the financial resources to meet the community needs of our people. And these are just some of the priorities that we will be looking at, which will benefit our community. The language and culture is very important to us, and these are all areas where right now we do have very, very limited supply of resources, and we're hoping that with the generation of this revenue and the development of our development corporation, they will look at the priorities and assigning dollars to those. Language and culture is very important to us. Education, as I mentioned earlier, and housing. We need to provide relief and services for our elders, infrastructure, we need more housing, we need more bridges, we need more roads, we need piping for our water treatment plant, and we need to provide more programs and services for our young people who are our future generations, and tied with that our health and recreation. So those are just some examples of how we see the generation of the revenue that we hope to get from these projects, while not only helping to protect and preserve the environment, we're helping to provide more infrastructure and services for our community and help us to become what we all want, which is to be an economically self-sufficient and healthy community. So that's my presentation, and that's my information and my contact, and we're really glad to be here. As I said, I have my executive director with us, and we're certainly willing to sit and meet with some people after the presentations are finished today. Yawa.